Pacific Women Leaders Coalition. Madam President. Thank you, Ambassador. I invite President Dr. Hilda C. Heine to deliver the opening statement.
Good afternoon. Yago kumalep ipagiyanin emman imlelok kile nawar kamolol ngani urgaman kincho cibang im kajbarogewan ngan kajkachoyo im ngan lalinar ainanin kile im kaude ngani roj im leroy roar lo moymoyer im lo pelako kachoyo ilawan im ilgun majal iparanot pagiyanin im lewaja kile awle barmijin majal alaptada karero chinen ailinkein eno de kuelawin e kamman ngan piwot mejalan abang koreleng imrejelet kare President Tsai and distinguished members of your delegation, Palau Minister Faustina Raoul-Marou, Congresswoman Aumua Amada Coleman Radewagen, Ambassador George Fraser, Foreign Fisheries Director General Dr. Manu Topu Rosen, Social Inclusion Advisor Ms. Melina Nawadra, SPC Program Director Kunesalani, Chairperson Ria Mars Christian, former Speaker Judith Wanbat, distinguished panelists, participants present here and online from around the Pacific region and beyond. Speaker of the Nidijale and Mrs. Speaker, Chief Justice Carlin Crum, members of the Cabinet and senators and your good spouses, members of the Diplomatic Corps, civil society and business representatives, ladies and gentlemen. Before I begin my opening remarks this afternoon, may I ask that we all stand, please. I ask that we observe a moment of silence in solidarity with the families of the victims of the recent horrible act of terrorism in Christchurch, New Zealand. May I ask that we all stand, please. I ask that we observe a moment of silence in solidarity with the families of the victims of the recent
Thank you.
horrible
You may
act
be
of
seated.
terrorism in Christchurch, New Zealand.
It is my pleasure as your host to make this opening address on behalf of the government of the Republic of the Marshall Islands. Congresswoman Radewagen, welcome home. This is your second home. I'm sure your visit brings back fond memories of the time you spent with us here in the Marshall Islands many, many years ago. I also extend appreciation to President Tsai and our government for supporting this Pacific Women Leaders Conference initiative, thereby turning a dream into reality. I want to begin by sharing with you the genesis and background for this conference, the Pacific Women Leaders Coalition Conference. In 2016, President Tsai and I had our very first meeting in Taipei in our capacities as president of RMI and ROC Taiwan, respectively. At the time, I was only 5 months into my new job, so the conversation was not only timely, but also very motivating for me. In addition to matters of state related to the very strong bilateral relations between Taiwan and the Marshall Islands, we both recognize that as women leaders, and despite our strong commitment to gender equality and women's human rights, we continue to face challenges in our quest to promote greater gender equality. We also recognize that progress on gender equality issues was painfully slow. This should not be surprising, since women are invariably the lone or minority voice in any meeting or forum. Issues on gender equality often get sidelined against competing priorities or other more pertinent issues. They are often the last to be placed on the agenda, if ever. This mindset is often what determines the fate of our cause for gender equality, and as a result, we often miss opportunities to integrate a gender perspective across our development agenda. This conference is an opportunity to think deeper about the role that Pacific Women Leaders Coalition can play in our collective efforts, be it at the national, regional, or international level. While we take on leadership roles in our respective countries and communities, we are also leaders of a marginalized segment of society, and we must not lose sight of that. As a women leader, I have come to realize that we need to strengthen our collective efforts and explore opportunities to forge and create new partnerships to advance our agenda on gender equality. This is not to say that existing efforts are not at all useful. What I'm saying is that we need new approaches and innovative thinking to accelerate current efforts and build new alliances to advance progress on our agenda. This year and the next are significant years for the journey of Pacific women in promoting gender equality. 2019 is the 25th anniversary of the Pacific Platform for Action for Gender Equality and Women's Human Rights, or the PPA. The original PPA, endorsed in 1994, formed the basis of the Pacific's inputs at the Beijing Conference in 1994, and 2020, as you know, is the 25th anniversary of Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. Ladies and gentlemen, this conference, therefore, is convened at a pivotal moment in the history of our journey as Pacific women, as we haul our canoe over open waters in this milestone of our voyage, to assess the winds, to push the stern and guide the bow of our canoe forward. We are reminded to keep our efforts well grounded in our Blue Pacific identity and cultural heritage before we continue the journey ahead. The vision for the creation of the Pacific Women Leaders Coalition sees the existence of a mechanism that will further support and strengthen our work on gender equality. Our experiences as women leaders has shown that we cannot be complacent about our work on gender equality. We cannot continue to do business as usual. Rather, we need to consider how we can innovate and maximize opportunities through genuine and durable partnerships at national, regional, and international level towards making progress on gender equality in the Pacific. The Pacific Women Leaders Coalition Conference provides a platform to mobilize and amplify the collective voice of Pacific women so that we can have a group of committed, and dare I say, courageous people pressing for and making sustained progress towards gender equality and women's human rights in the Pacific. We are lucky to be where we are. Many others are not so. We must work harder to be their voice in the highest decision-making arena. I acknowledge that we all have access to our existing networks and current mechanisms for promoting gender equality, both at national and regional levels. However, I see so much potential for and synergy in a group of dedicated people, women and men, leaders in our respective fields, to be it in the community development or political office, called the Pacific Women Leaders Coalition, to actively support each other and provide a coordinated platform and voice for gender equality and empowerment to all women and girls. As we work towards creating this mechanism, the conference is also an occasion for reflection. In some areas, we have made great strides toward achieving gender equality, but in others, progress has been slow, given the many obstacles, some overt, others not so, that still stand in the way. Since taking my current position, I have grown to appreciate the hardships faced by many of our families. My government has worked tirelessly in the last 3 years to put in place a social agenda that seeks to lift up the status of marginalized groups and improve their livelihoods. Despite these efforts, much more needs to be done, including opportunities to embed more sustainable solutions across sectors of society. I believe my meaningful conversation on women's economic empowerment must consider New Zealand's approach to budgeting, the so-called well-being budget, which broadens the measurement of growth and success beyond dollars and financial figures. I think this is a more holistic approach to budgeting that gives a clearer picture of how our people are really doing. Ladies and gentlemen, as I come to the conclusion of my remarks, my opening remarks, I would like to share with you something that came across in a media release from the International Women's Day, which resonated with the thinking that President Tsai and I had when we first discussed the concept of Pacific Women Leaders Coalition. The CNN headline that caught my attention read, 2 women astronauts are scheduled for the first all-female crew spacewalk in history. Reading the CNN report from NASA, I learned that for the first time in history, an all-female crew will conduct a spacewalk for about 7 hours on 29 March, at the International Space Station, and that's in 3 days from today. All women crew walking on space or in space. As women leaders, we are on a different kind of spacewalk. What we are embarking on today is equally outrageous and exciting. And while we may be headed for uncharted waters, we must not lose sight of the fact that we are Pacific navigators, voyagers, and explorers. We have the guidance of the current beneath us, the wind in our sails, and the stars to show our way. While we may be in a new seascape, I am confident that with our collective support and unity, we will achieve our goals of improving the lives of all of our people. Thank you very much. Kumol tada. Thank you.
Komol, Madam President, for sharing your visions of and ambitions for the Pacific Women Leaders Coalition. We now welcome Her Excellency, President Dr. Tsai Ing-wen, Republic of China, Taiwan, to deliver her keynote address. Madam President.
Thank you. Your Excellency, President Heine, Minister Matthew, Minister Raoul-Marou, and U.S. Congresswoman Radewagen, and Ambassador Fraser of Australia. Seems to be the only male in this roundtable. And friends from the Diplomatic Corps, members, women of the Marshall Islands, and distinguished guests. Good afternoon. And Yagwei. To start, I want to thank President Heine for inviting me. It's an honor to participate in the Pacific Women Leaders Coalition Conference and meet so many outstanding female leaders from our region. As Taiwan is a member of the Pacific family, this invitation is particularly meaningful to me and to people in Taiwan. In Taiwan's indigenous culture, women often play an important role in clan leaderships. In many communities and tribes, participation in public affairs is also open to both men and women. I know that Austronesian cultural cycles also share very similar traditions. Here is a good example. In Taiwan, most of the ambassadors and envoys from Pacific Island countries are women. That includes the Marshall Islands ambassador, Palau ambassador, Nauru ambassador, and Kiribati ambassador, and Tuvalu ambassador to Taiwan. all of whom are women. As diplomats, their professional performance never fails to impress me. There are many other examples, including every female leader here at this conference table. And of course, President Heine and I are the first women to hold the office of the president in our respective countries. This shows that the Pacific region's gender culture is becoming increasingly open and inclusive. I trust that the stories of everyone here today will inspire more women to have greater courage and higher aspirations. Here, I would like to take some time to share with you the current state of gender equality in Taiwan. In this year's Women, Business, and the Law report by the World Bank, Taiwan scored 91.25, the best performance in Asia. Taiwan is also one of the 6 countries in the world that has eliminated all job restrictions for women. This month, the Taiwan Navy also named its 2nd female captain, and we already have outstanding female fighter pilots. So in this previously all-male domain, more women are starting to participate, which shows that gender equality is taking hold in Taiwan. And in fact, our efforts to promote gender equality stretch back over a decade. Over the past 10 years, with support from our Women Entrepreneurship Flying Geese program, the percentage of female entrepreneurs in Taiwan today has risen to 36%. When more women gain economic independence, the country becomes more stable and prosperous. So we are also planning to help more women start their own businesses and gain economic independence. Taiwan's support for female entrepreneurs is also international. In 2016, Taiwan and the US cooperated to launch the APEC Women and Economy Subfund, helping more women start their own businesses and pursue their own career aspirations. I am pleased to announce that later President Heine and I will witness the signing of an MOU to establish a revolving fund for small business loans to women. That fund will allow us to provide Marshallese women with the resources they need to start their own businesses. Even more important than economic autonomy, the process of building a business from the ground up gives women tremendous satisfaction, a sense of accomplishment, and self-confidence. I have always believed that real gender equality comes from within, and from having strong self-confidence. Women never need to seek other people's approval. Women are not mere accessories. As long as we believe in ourselves, we can unleash our unlimited potential. My dear sisters and brothers of the Pacific region, Taiwan is ready, willing, and able to work with all of you to promote a broader gender equality movement. So here I want to announce that Taiwan is going to host the Pan-Pacific and Southeast Asian Women's Association International Conference in June this year, and the 4th World Conference of Women's Shelters in November. Taiwan is determined to play a greater and long-term role in promoting gender equality in this region. And it is with my great pleasure and honor to be with so many female leaders from the Pacific today. So I look forward to fostering more cooperation across national boundaries to achieve greater gender equality. Thank you.
Shishe, Madam President, for those inspirational words. We are now moving into our conference proper program, and we'll be hearing from some women leaders. The first remark will be delivered by Honorable Minister Faustina Raoul-Marou, Minister of State, Republic of Palau. Madam Minister.
Sulang, thank you, MC. Yokwe, Ali, Your Excellency Heine, Your Excellency Tsai, Excellencies, Honorables, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I greatly applaud and congratulate Your Excellency Heine for your efforts in putting together the inaugural Pacific Women Leaders Coalition Conference, along with your discussion, as you mentioned, with President Tsai when you were meeting in Taiwan. And I think it takes a lot of efforts and discussion to put this together. Your hard work has certainly gone long ways to bring together the Pacific women, and I commend you for that. It is no longer a men's game for women are players too, and major players at that. It is building and growing together, what I call a garden of the minds, one that is inclusive of culture and politics, culture and economics, all together with the awareness and involvement at the community level. It is leadership with the right attitudes, beliefs, and sentiments of both politics and economics, paired with a strong culture, as such influences the views, the values, the hopes of fostering growth and development. Initially, it was the ideal to simply accept the differences of one another. Today, that is not enough. Today, we must not only accept our individual differences as people or as nations, but we must also learn to be different altogether and be different for each other. It is our differences that contribute to our efforts in working together and making a difference as Pacific women. We must approach things from the Blue Pacific perspective, keeping in mind that that is inclusive of everyone, from the leadership level down to the very people in our villages, practicing traditional agriculture, aquaculture systems, so that the future generations have a chance at what we have. The fishermen that still pull rafts to go fishing, or the farmers who still manually toil the taro fields. And those are the very people in our community level that actually make our villages tick. They're the ones that make them breathe every day, feed our children every day, clothe them to go to school every day, make sure that they have what they need to go to their village schools. And those are what we need to focus our attention towards. I also would like Your Excellency Heine, that we must also include culture in diplomacy, because that's the very nature of what we are in the Pacific as Marshallese, as Palauans, as Samoans, as Chamorro, as wherever in the Pacific. We must ensure that our diplomacy must inclusive with our culture, because we must take culture with us into the future. Heine, I was given very short minutes, and so I want to end my short remark by relaying a chant that I learned as a young girl growing up. I memorized it without really comprehending it, except that we were taught to care for our surroundings from ridge to reef. So when I chant Congresswoman Radewagen, we were classmates at one time in university. And sitting across from her, it brings back memory as women growing up going to school in the University of Guam. So I really welcome and great to see you here. So when I chant, I would like to, at the end, I would like everyone to acknowledge the chant by saying, Hui. And let me just, before I chant, I would like to say what the chant means. The chant means we all are migrants here. We are migrants to the Marshalls, to Taiwan, to Palau, to Samoa, to wherever we're from. We are all migrants to where we came from. But we don't own the land where we moved to. It's only the water, the rocks, the core of the earth owns the land when we're from. And now I'm doing my research at one of my studies. I realized, oh no, that's what it meant. It means you better look after what you have. You were given your water, your soil, your taro fields, your fishing grounds. You better look after it, because you are just users, you're just abusers, but you must make sure you look after it for your next generation. So here it goes. Oh, the swakla. Oh, the swaklelang. Oh, bilngasu layaong. Akardul marayle me. Mangkalbalwa daw ay ka. Makalatme daw ay ka. Di ba maral mapatangayaw asakaw. Amre rao temiyang. Hooray! Thank you so much.
Kukmal Mesulanga, Minister. I now welcome Honorable Auma Amata Coleman Radewagen, Congresswoman, United States Representative from American Samoa, to share her thoughts about women in leadership. Madam Congresswoman.
Yakwe and Talofa, thank you. It's a special honor to be here at this conference, which recognizes the empowerment of Pacific women. A generation ago, I'm confident that a Pacific Women's Leadership Conference would not have had quite so many of us. I've been privileged to travel much of the world, and without doubt, I've seen many great advancements for women in my lifetime. Wherever I go, I meet rising women leaders in business and in communities, more women in military leadership and in government. That sentiment is also personified by the fact that I'm here in this country at the invite of a national leader, President Dr. Hilda Heine, and that also present is the democratically elected leader of Taiwan, President Tsai Ing-wen. I'm personally privileged to call these Pacific leaders my friends. More importantly, the United States maintains robust friendships with these important partners and many others represented here today. We have much more in common than the surface, that we're women elected to leadership, or even that we represent beautiful island places in the Pacific. We also share something more important, that is our deeply held values of freedom and democracy. These are the ideals that do more to advance the dreams and opportunities of women than any other political system on earth. I can tell you by experience and conversation in the United States Congress that our friends in Taiwan are known, appreciated, and supported exactly as Secretary of State Mike Pompeo recently put it. To quote his words, they are, and I quote, a democratic success story, a reliable partner, and a force for good in the world, end of quote. In the U.S., we are early in the 116th Congress. It is the most diverse in our history, including the most ever women elected to Congress, totaling about 1/4 of the entire membership of Congress. Why? Opportunity is a natural result of a free and open system. That's why Taiwan has strong female participation in public offices and a commendable record on women's rights. Nearly 40% of their legislature and 1/3 of local offices are held by women. In some of our island cultures, we hold very tightly to our traditions. That's one of our strengths, and we should always hold on to the best of our Pacific ways. For instance, in Samoa, where I'm from, women can hold chiefly roles, such as my grandmother did before me. But elected leadership for women has not had such deep roots in our islands. That will change, not because of some outside pressure, but because of the remarkable young leaders that are being educated in our schools as equals, trained in our armed forces as equals, or studying in the universities, just as many women as men. And this new generation of leaders will not be limited in their aspirations. I've had the opportunity to visit or even live in a number of the places represented in this room today. And I have especially wonderful youthful memories right here in the Marshall Islands, President Heine. Throughout the Pacific, we share many things about our cultures and lifestyles as we share this great ocean. We also share in some way or another a Pacific partnership with the United States. In American Samoa's case, we are actually part of the United States, but others are freely associated states, and most here are friends, allies, and trading partners in areas like fishing, tourism, and other economic aspects. I want to take a moment to thank you all. I did not name every place represented here, but I do know the U.S. values our many friends and neighbors, and that the U.S. takes great interest in the vast Pacific region. One of these friends is New Zealand, which earlier this month endured an unspeakable sadness. I've been warmly welcomed in my visits to New Zealand, beautiful islands and wonderful people, and I know we all send them our love. Let's continue the progress for women by continuing the progress for everyone in a world that values freedom, individuality, personal beliefs, and expression. I know this conference will be a real encouragement and a success, and that we will leave this event inspired. I'm always so optimistic about the future, and I've never been more optimistic about the future of women and girls. This conference adds to my optimism, and it's a delight to join you. Komoltara, soifua maia manuia. Thank you.
Fa'afetai Telilava, Madam Congresswoman. Honorable Minister Ann Rustin, Assistant Minister for International Development and for the Pacific from Australia, was unable to join us today in person. However, she has recorded a message for us. I would like to acknowledge the presence of Ambassador George Fraser from Australia, Embassy from the Federated States of Micronesia. Ambassador.
Employment by approximately 2 to 1. Narrow ideas about gender roles hamper women's ability to Australia. In my time as Australia's Assistant Minister for International Development and the Pacific, I've had the privilege of meeting women who are driving change all over our region. I've met women who are serving their communities with distinction in business, government and civil society. But their successes have not come without challenges. The Pacific has some of the lowest rates of women political participation in the world. Outside the agriculture sector, men outnumber women in paid employment by approximately 2 to 1. Narrow ideas about gender roles hamper women's ability to make themselves heard. I suspect I'm preaching to the choir when I say that gender inequality holds us all back. No country, including Australia, is immune to its effect. Undervaluing women undermines prosperity, stability and security. which is why advancing women's human rights is central to Australia's foreign policy, economic diplomacy and development programs. It drives what we do around the world, including in our own region. We are working in partnership with you to ensure women and girls can thrive. Our Pacific Women Shaping Pacific Development Initiative works to amplify women's voices at all levels of decision making, expanding women's opportunities to earn an income and working to end family violence. More broadly, Australia has stepped up our Pacific engagement. We're investing 1.3 billion Australian dollars in the region this year alone through a range of partnerships. We've also established an Office of the Pacific in the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade to support our efforts to build stronger relationships with Pacific leaders, governments and people. The Pacific is our home. We're partners, we're friends, we're family. Working together to make sure our region is secure strategically, stable economically and sovereign politically. I'm so sorry I can't be with you in person, but can I commend my friend, President Hilda?
Economic empowerment. Madam.
Thank you very much, Molly. And at the outset, Your Excellency, President Heine, Your Excellency Tsai Ing-wen, it is a great honour to contribute to this important forum. There was a fascinating article in Bioscience magazine a couple of years back called Fisher Women, Shedding Light on the Invisible Gender. The author Leslie Evans Ogden asks, fisher or fisherman? What do you call a person who catches fish? She writes that when it comes to fishing, language has a gender bias. And while this probably isn't surprising, given that catching fish in large-scale deep-sea commercial operations is still male-dominated, women perform an equally important role in the landing, processing, and marketing of fish. The article notes in many places around the world, the role of women in fisheries has long been invisible, underestimated, or not enumerated at all. Evans Ogden goes on to say that researchers are finally beginning to shed light on the role of women in fisheries, making the invisible visible. And I think this goes to the heart of women's economic empowerment, the theme I've been asked to speak to this afternoon. If women are to become more economically empowered, we must first be more visible. Highlight the problems so there can be more focus on solutions. Empowering women means we empower families, communities, and ultimately countries. Economic empowerment for a woman is akin to true independence. It allows a woman the power of choice in what she does, says, or even wears. It's critical to teach our girls to be economically independent and stand on their own 2 feet, even when they are with a very supportive and open-minded partner. Increasing community understanding of the economic contribution made by Pacific women in fisheries and the financial challenges they face will be a focus of the FFA. For example, the FFA is about to begin a collaboration to identify mechanisms for improving women's employment in fisheries. This is an enormously exciting development for the FFA, and I'd like to share some details this afternoon because the outcomes that can be achieved are applicable to many sectors. And this is where we highlight 3 of the key issues: gender-based job segregation in fisheries, low financial literacy, and the attendance of fish processing staff, 70% of whom are women, and the absenteeism when they are not at work, the challenge that poses. And let me stress here that absenteeism in the processing industry is most pronounced before payday each month and is driven by the simple need for women to find other sources of cash, like selling goods at local markets until their regular pay comes through. This type of disempowerment does not need to continue. the work that the FFA will be doing is very much focused on financially empowering women. For example, leveraging the successful Business Coalition for Women program run in Papua New Guinea that has trained women in leadership and management. We plan to migrate the concept to fisheries. Increasing the financial literacy and attendance of fish processing staff, we propose to work with others, key partner stakeholders, crop agencies, especially our member countries, to undertake a financial literacy audit amongst the employees of fish processing companies and then deliver financial literacy training. The course will target processors in a number of our countries, including PNG, Fiji, and Kiribati, and be delivered by local trainers. The right training can be a game changer in women's lives. When such courses have been run, the proportion of workers reporting that they always had money left the day before payday increased by 120%. There was an 80% increase in workers having a savings goal, and the proportion of workers making a household budget tripled. Another initiative we're excited about is a concept to train and commission an all-woman fishing crew. There are currently a number of women soon to graduate from the Fiji Maritime Training School who would be suitable crew. Our joint work with others is built on a foundation of close cooperation, a principle that's key to the work of FFA and the platform from which we operate. We will work together to engage the fisheries sector to sponsor participants in leadership and financial literacy courses and facilitate female crews starting with a longline vessel in Fiji. The FFA has also developed a gender equity framework to remove barriers to the full participation by women in all sectors of the regional tuna fishery and ensure appropriate gender policies are mainstreamed into our administration. We are determined to walk the talk when it comes to how the FFA operates. I'd like to wrap up by observing that we rightly talk a lot in the Pacific about sustainable development. However, sustainable development cannot be successful unless we bring all of our people with us, men and women, on an equal footing. Our oceans and its fisheries resources are our lifeline. So if we are to manage these resources, we must work together to bring economic empowerment for our entire society, not just one half of it. And in your words, President Heine, to make this dream a reality. Ko mo tata.
Hi from Australia. In my time as Australia's Assistant Minister for International Development and the Pacific, I've had the privilege of meeting women who are driving change all over our region.
Mahalo apito, Director General. Leutuala, Quinisalani Taulupe Tago Elisara, Director of the Social Development Program from Pacific Community, SPC. You have the floor to speak on women in leadership. Madam.
Thank you, Madam MC. Your Excellency, President Heine, Your Excellency, President Tsai, all protocols observed. Yakwe, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I bring you warm greetings from the Pacific community. In Samoa, we have a famous proverb that says, "E au le'ina ilau ata maitai," which translates to mean, the legacy of women is one of achievements, accomplishments, victory, and success. It's an honor to be invited to speak at this prestigious event. This conference is indeed part of our legacy as Pacific women, and our ina ilau as Tamaitai lives on. I've been asked to talk about some key things on how a Women Leaders Coalition will be important from a women in leadership perspective. The endorsement by our Pacific Island Forum leaders of our Blue Pacific identity, as alluded to by Minister Faustina, speaks to the importance of our collective as a region, and more importantly, the need to socialize our Blue Pacific narrative across the relevant regional and international forums. I've just come back from attending the 63rd session of the Commission on the Status of Women at the United Nations headquarters in New York, the largest ever gender equality global policy forum. And what is glaringly clear is we ourselves in the gender equality space and as Pacific women leaders need to be present and to engage in these global forums to advocate for global policies that translates to transformative action on the ground for our women and girls. The last 2 weeks in New York also tells me that we need to revisit our approach when it comes to engaging in these global forums by way of having clear messages to inform a global advocacy strategy that is consistently applied across the board. Our global advocacy strategy as a region is about getting consensus on relevant issues into one Blue Pacific identity that not only recognizes our diverse cultures and contexts, but at the same time appreciates the value in our collective and women's agency to advance gender equality. Ladies and gentlemen, the reference to our collective and the strategic positioning of our concerns and issues as Pacific women brings to the fore the significance of a Pacific Women Leaders Coalition, because it provides, in my view, a strategic platform for Pacific women to strengthen their agency and to engage in conversations where we not only share knowledge and experiences, but one where we can continuously strategize on promoting gender equality as a prerequisite to sustainable development. A coalition will also help nurture the much-needed leadership qualities that we need in today's world so our women and our girls can thrive and therefore remain resilient in a rapidly changing and increasingly challenging development environment and context. Ladies and gentlemen, we continue to look outside for answers. And while we acknowledge the many gains that we have made in engaging help from the outside, this has come with some associated costs to our environments and our heritage as Pacific people. We need to remind ourselves that the answers come from within, as President Tsai also referred to in her remarks. And as a collective, such as the Pacific Women's Coalition, Leaders Coalition, we can source guidance and strategic thinking through collaboration and partnerships towards a sustainable Blue Pacific continent. I thank Her Excellency, Madam President Heine, for the invitation to be part of this conference. I wish you all a pleasant afternoon, and always remember, e aule ina ilawa tamaitai, and may our legacy as Pacific women continue. Komol tata, soifua maia manuia.
FFA Director, Ms. Melania Nwandra, Social Inclusion Advisor from Pacific Island Forum Secretariat, you have the floor to speak about 3 issues relating to gender equality and human rights. Madam.
Your Excellency President Heine, Your Excellency President Tsai, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Yakwe and Bulavinaka from the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat. It is a pleasure for me to be here with you this afternoon. I have been asked to talk about gender and human rights. Human rights are inherent to all of us human beings, regardless of our nationality, where we live, our gender, ethnicity, religion, language, or any other status. We are all equally entitled to our human rights without any discrimination. Our own Pacific cultures value fairness, equality, protection of the most vulnerable, helping and serving others, participation, dialogue, and consensus building. These values and principles are embedded in our way of life and our beliefs, in our laws and policies, and in international human rights instruments that most of our countries have committed to. Most of our Pacific Island countries have presented their second round of universal periodic human rights reporting, an indication of the recognition of respecting and upholding human rights, which is a key aspect of the 2030 Agenda. A fundamental principle of the United Nations Charter adopted by world leaders in 1945 is equal rights of men and women. This provides the basis for protecting and promoting women's human rights. The 2030 Agenda, through SDG 5, recognizes that advancing gender equality is critical for sustainable development, to advancing human rights. Yet almost everywhere around the world, including here in our Pacific, women and girls are still denied them, often simply because of their gender. This, despite all the commitments made. We need Pacific women leaders to amplify the voices of Pacific women and girls, especially those that are more marginalized, such as our women in rural and maritime areas and our women with disabilities. Create visibility of their needs and ensure Pacific leaders and international partners are committed to realizing their needs. We need Pacific women leaders to show that we, Pacific women, are equally or more experienced, skilled, and capable. To lift the status of women, of Pacific women, and empower them to be active participants in all aspects of life. We need our Pacific women leaders to pave the way for our future leaders. Improved gender equality will significantly contribute to creating a prosperous, stable, and secure Blue Pacific continent for current and future generations. In the words of the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan, and I quote, "Gender equality is more than a goal in itself. It is a precondition for meeting the challenge of reducing poverty, promoting sustainable development, and building good governance," unquote. Gender equality is at the very heart of human rights. Vinaka.
Vinaka Advisor. Ms. Ria Moss, Chairperson for the National Nuclear Commission, the Republic of the Marshall Islands. The floor is yours to speak about 3 key issues on women and health. Commissioner.
Komol Mali, and good afternoon. Thank you very much, Madam President Heine and Madam President Tsai, for the invitation to speak to you today on women and health. I speak to you as the chair of the National Nuclear Commission for the Marshall Islands. And so the lens in which I look at women's health issues comes in the context of the nuclear legacy that faces in the Marshall Islands. But the issues that we face in addressing outstanding nuclear test issues cut across all sectors of women's health. It was nearly impossible to narrow down to just 3 issues that are important to discuss. So I picked 3 broad areas that I believe are critical not only for the work that we're doing in addressing the nuclear legacy, but in addressing a number of areas in women's health. Education is absolutely the foundation for good health, and the education of young girls in particular, and specifically about reproductive health. The key to understanding our bodies and how our bodies works comes from an education and a foundation that starts at a very young age. For many of us, this starts in the home with our own mothers and our own aunties and our grandmothers. And for others, this needs to come from more formal settings. Access to education leads to empowerment in the medical health system, in medical care. And that means having information and knowledge about health care and health treatments, and the ability to understand information that is given to you in the healthcare system, how to access the healthcare system. And that goes to the third point about access to healthcare. And access is not simply about just information, but it is about physically being able to have access to a clinic to attend to very basic needs. Our health goes well beyond our physical and reproductive health. Our health issues are unique from men's health because, of course, we're made differently. But also, not all diseases manifest in the same way in women and men. And women face completely separate sets of health challenges relating to socioeconomic conditions and cultural expectations or stigmas. These are just some of the factors that contribute to the unique challenges that women face in maintaining healthy bodies, which requires unique approaches and solutions to addressing those challenges. Without question, a healthy woman makes for a healthy family and, in turn, healthy communities. I want to leave you with the words of Lijan Eknelang, who was a councilwoman from the island of Rongelap and an advocate for Marshallese women who were facing health dangers as a result of the nuclear testing program in the Marshall Islands. This comes from her testimony to in 1995 to the International Court of Justice, when she said, "Women have experienced many reproductive cancers and abnormal births. Marshallese women suffer silently and differently from the men who were exposed to radiation. Our culture and religion teaches us that reproductive abnormalities are a sign that women have been unfaithful to their husbands. For this reason, many of my friends keep quiet about the strange births they had. In privacy, they give birth, not to children as we like to think of them, but to things we could only describe as octopuses, apples, turtles, and other things in our experience. We do not have Marshallese words for these kinds of babies because they were never born before the radiation came." I look forward to the discussions tomorrow when we'll hear from several regional health experts to talk about women in health and to discuss these important issues further. Thank you again very much.
Kumwaltada Commissioner, I understand that the video is ready for play, so we will start first with Australia.
Hi from Australia. In my time as Australia's Assistant Minister for International Development and the Pacific, I've had the privilege of meeting women who are driving change all over our region. I've met women who are serving their communities with distinction in business, government and civil society. But their successes have not come without challenges. The Pacific has some of the lowest rates of women political participation in the world. Outside the agriculture sector, men outnumber women in paid employment by approximately 2 to 1. Narrow ideas about gender roles hamper women's ability to make themselves heard. I suspect I'm preaching to the choir when I say that gender inequality holds us all back. No country, including Australia, is immune to its effect. Undervaluing women undermines prosperity, stability and security, which is why advancing women's human rights is central to Australia's foreign policy, economic diplomacy and development programs. It drives what we do around the world, including in our own region. We are working in partnership with you to ensure women and girls can thrive. Our Pacific Women Shaping Pacific Development Initiative works to amplify women's voices at all levels of decision making, expanding women's opportunities to earn an income and working to end family violence. More broadly, Australia has stepped up our Pacific engagement. We're investing $1.3 billion Australian dollars in the region this year alone through a range of partnerships. We've also established an Office of the Pacific in the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade to support our efforts to build stronger relationships with Pacific leaders, governments and people. The Pacific is our home. We're partners, we're friends, we're family. Working together to make sure our region is secure strategically, stable economically and sovereign politically. I'm so sorry I can't be with you in person, but can I commend my friend President Hilda Heine for her foresight in gathering together our colleagues from across the Pacific to discuss how we can support women in leadership. It's a fitting continuation of her pioneering work to support Marshallese women and families through the NGO Put Me. I hope the next 2 days offer a chance to explore new pathways for women to grow as leaders in their communities, in business and in politics. It's an opportunity to draw inspiration from one another. By working together to advance gender equality, we give ourselves the best chance of reaching our collective potential and shaping a future that is more secure, stable and prosperous for all.
Thank you to the ambassador. We apologize for the slight delay in viewing, as we are streaming these online as well. But thank you to the Assistant Minister for her recording. And we would now like to show a recording from Honorable Speaker Tina Rose Muna Barnes of Guam Legislature. I would like to acknowledge the presence of former Speaker of Guam, Judith Pat, who will be joining us in one of our panel sessions tomorrow. Welcome, Madam.
Her Excellency Dr. Hilda Heine, thank you for the invitation to speak today, and thank you for setting the example for women across the region. June 4th of this year will mark the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment that granted women the right to vote. 56 years ago, President John F. Kennedy signed the Equal Pay Act, ensuring men and women would be paid the same wages for the same work. In 1972, Title IX of the Education Amendments prohibited sex discrimination in all aspects of education programs that receive federal support. These milestones are cause for celebration, but you won't find me jumping for joy. Not because I don't think these are special, because they certainly are. It's because they are special that my excitement is tempered. These shouldn't be special occasions or landmark events. These should have been the norm. Women getting paid the same wage as men should have been the norm. A woman shouldn't have to be grateful for the opportunity to own land in her name without permission from her husband. Women shouldn't feel gifted for having the right to vote. Rather, we should have been able to choose our leaders just like men were allowed to do from the start. Arabella Mansfield became the first female lawyer in America in 1869, but it wasn't until July 7th, 1981, 112 years later, that a woman, Sandra Day O'Connor, was given the opportunity to serve on the United States Supreme Court. 1917 saw Loretta Walsh, the first female to bravely enlist in the United States military, but it was only in 2013 that the ban prohibiting women to serve in combat positions was lifted. In 1953, Jerry Cobb became the first United States woman to undergo astronaut testing, but it wasn't until 1983 that the first woman, Sally Ride, was sent into space. The good news is that history has seen the gender inequality gap lessen over time. The bad news is that it is still so wide that we need additional laws to complement original legislation meant to close the gap. If the Equal Pay Act of 1963 was effective, we wouldn't need the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act signed by President Barack Obama, which makes it easier to challenge an employer regarding disparity in the pay based on gender. Today, women make approximately 20 cents less on the dollar than our male counterparts. That may not seem like much, but in a 20-year span, that adds up to about $500,000. From unequal treatment in the workplace to crimes against women, we will always be fighting to be heard, to be treated fairly, to be recognized for our abilities, and what's inside, and not just what's on the exterior. In my second term as senator, I introduced legislation that brought awareness to human trafficking worldwide, but also here in our part of the world. Women from our neighboring islands looking for a better life or who see an opportunity to provide for their families are promised well-paying jobs at restaurants or hotels, only to be forced into selling their bodies while being threatened with torture or death. This is modern-day slavery, and we can't stand by and let this happen. I plan to introduce legislation that will establish programs for victims of human trafficking here on Guam to get these women back on their feet, help them get educated, and assist with care of their children. Girls, ladies, women, be vigilant, be diligent, and be strong. It is our time now, and as far as I'm concerned, it's been our time since the beginning of time. If you feel you have been passed over for a promotion or a pay raise because of your gender or race, speak up. If you are being told to know your place in the workplace, speak up. If you are a victim of domestic violence, human trafficking, or any crime because of your gender or race, seek help and stand up. This never has to be a road of man versus woman, but we have to stand together and unite in the cause of equality. We will definitely ensure that this road never ever again becomes a woman in a man's road. A community leader stated in a 2012 speech, historically, politics have been dominated by men, and through the years, women have been making a greater presence. There is a need for women representation, and no one can better advance the interest of women than women themselves. She added, many of our past and present women senators have been successful, but we need to have a greater representation. Women in politics on Guam have improved our representation, but it's not there yet. But the most we have had in the legislature is 29% representation, and yet we make up 51.8% of the electorate. We have had the first female speaker. We have not had a female governor. We have made strides, but we need to work harder. The woman who wrote those words believed in them so much, and she decided to run for governor herself, and she won. Today, that 29% is more than doubling to 67% in the legislature. Today, we have made history. Making history with the majority of the women in the legislature, a female governor, a female chief justice, a female federal judge, a female president of the Mayor's Council of Guam, a female adjutant general in the Guam Army National Guard, and a female rear admiral in charge of the Joint Region Marianas. That in itself speaks volumes. But for me, that is not enough. History is being made every day. Let us work together. Continue to make history. Take our Pacific region to heights that she has never reached before. Let's empower ourselves. Let's encourage our daughters to never settle. Let's assist other women in carving their niche as we carve our own. In closing, I would like to add that for women to really succeed, let's not celebrate just the first. Let's prepare the next. On behalf of the women of Guam, the people of Guam, the 35th Guam Legislature, Undangkalo na si Diyos Masi, thank you for letting me speak here today.
Sisuus Maase, Speaker. Next on our agenda, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call on our leaders and our guests. They could stand behind the TV so that we can take a picture of the audience and them for a full photo. Group photo. Immediately after the group photo will be a break, a 15-minute break. Yeah. Yes, facing this way, we'll take a photo, and everybody, our other guests from behind will also stand so that we can take this group photo. O kung merong chojum chudak bakayangan and pagchon group photo. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our official opening program for this afternoon. We will take a 15-minute break while we set up for the next item on program. There are refreshments outside in the hall, and the distinguished guests will proceed upstairs to the President's Conference Room. I invite all of us to give comments, questions, and feedback via Facebook page, Twitter, or our website. If you do not have the link, please search Pacific Women Leaders Coalition. Thank you very much. Kajana pagchongo lalim minute break, mlamay ni barrodo bachen kiyo kamane programa chonareng, kumoltada.
Hi, my name is Menka Gaundred and I'm the Senior Program Manager at the Fiji Women's Fund. The Fiji Women's Fund was incepted
对，我帮他换完，所以他们两个不再换，他们俩不换了，所以就换2次。哎，哎，反正他就拿起来这样子。你是司仪哦？对，我是司仪。很重要哎。你也不要讲说他们两个换，他们换约都不要讲，换约都不要讲，对，那不用讲。然后就之后签好之后，他们都请他们签署就好。放在这边，然后我们就从这边测。对对对。来，我们来做一次好了，来。OK， 来 some rehearsal。
所以
OK action。
而且我跟你讲，总统会这样用，会列错，他会看哦。你要一次翻就翻完，对不对？可以啊，可以啊。
要不要先吸？要不要吸？
常常会忘记吸，香炉那天也是。So you wait for okay change.
Change， 他的不会背那个嘛，对不对？总统的那个不会背那个嘛？
这是故意者，对不对？
对啊，这样他才。前面在这边等的时候蛮尴尬的。
而且他们那边有挡到，小心那个麦现在是开着的，讲话小心。
然后这个舌叫和，然后这个舌叫和。对啊。
正好最后全部签完之后啊，就说那个就是要让他们合影，对，是啊，你是怎么想？
把红头巾。
你要不要看一下视角？因为视角会影响到自己。慢慢练就好，不用紧张。
Revolving Fund Karaiman Kul will now begin.
中华民国台湾政府与马绍尔群岛共和国政府有关妇女创业小额贷款循环基金了解备忘录签署仪式开始。
Whereas the government of the Republic of the Marshall Islands reaffirms its commitment to the 2030 Sustainable Development Goal Agenda for a peaceful and prosperous world, and addressing human rights and gender equality is central to this, and this is aligned with national priorities and policies. The government of the Republic of Taiwan, China-Taiwan, wishes to share its development experience in promoting gender equality and empowerment, women's empowerment. As such, the government of the Republic of China-Taiwan and the government of the Republic of the Marshall Islands hereby signs Memorandum of Understanding regarding Women's Business Startup Loan revolving the Karaim Ankul Fund to further strengthen their cooperation and friendship.
中华民国台湾政府与马绍尔群岛共和国政府基于体认妇女赋权对国家永续发展之重要性，秉持平等互惠原则，以促进妇女经济参与，在此签署《中华民国台湾政府与马绍尔群岛共和国政府妇女创业小额贷款循环基金了解备忘录》。
We would like to invite Honorable Minister Amantha Matthew and Honorable Minister Dr. Joseph Wu to sign the Memorandum of Understanding regarding the Business Startup Small Loan Revolving Fund Karaim Ankul Fund.
请吴部长及马修部长签署中华民国台湾政府与马绍尔群岛共和国政府妇女创业小额贷款循环基金了解备忘录。
We would like to invite Her Excellency President Dr. Hilda C. Heine, Her Excellency President Dr. Tsai Ing-wen, Honorable Minister Amantha Matthews, Honorable Minister Dr. Joseph Wu to join together for a photo.
请蔡总统阁下、海尼总统阁下、吴部长及马修部长合影。
We would now like to invite Her Excellency President Dr. Hilda C. Heine to present her remarks. Madam President.
马绍尔群岛共和国总统海尼阁下致辞。
Perjuangan kamolol irojik mga dadagan rainin mieni naur. Kile mani deo kieneo regagi roar rojan tublo medi koreo imalu kumar kubado lo rainin ngan kamole ar meron karsainis emoyuin. Kalaptada karero meron benefit chen projecting. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure for me to be with you, Madam President, as we witness the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between the Republic of China, Taiwan, and the Republic of the Marshall Islands regarding Women Business Startup Loan Revolving Fund, or Karemankil, each woman to her own style. That's really what it means. Marshallese women have dreamt of a microcredit fund dedicated to their needs as responsible heads of families, businesswomen, and community leaders. Today, they are realizing their dream, thanks to you, your government, and the people of Taiwan. I take this opportunity on their behalf to thank you sincerely for helping to make this dream possible. The fund will provide financing capital for women to develop and expand their small-scale businesses and other community projects under terms and conditions affordable to them and their respective economic situations. It has been said that when women succeed, families and communities succeed. With the investment of $1 million into the revolving fund, we are halfway to meet our target of $2 million for this revolving fund. ROC Taiwan's partnership in this endeavor is encouraging and important to our national goals and aspirations. We look forward to seek from other donor partners to help the fund meet its target goal. I would like to acknowledge the dedication and effort of staff from both sides who have contributed to finalizing these MOU. Most importantly, I thank you, Madam President, and the people of Taiwan for the steadfast support towards lifting the economic well-being of our citizens through such programs as the Women Revolving Fund, among many others. In closing, I would like to ask three of our Leroch to please come up and help me present our appreciation gift to the President of Taiwan. May I ask Leroch Esther Chadagaya, Leroch Margaret, and we are presenting to you today 3 pandanus seedlings from 3 different and most delicious varieties of our pandanus fruit trees. The fruit and leaves of pandanus trees are very special to the Marshallese people. The pandanus fruit and juice has high nutrition value, and the pandanus rolls made from dried pandanus juice are the food of choice for long voyages between islands. The leaves are what we use to make clothes, sleeping mats, and most recently, our beautiful handicrafts. Liok tutpok is a Marshallese saying referencing the strength of the roots of pandanus trees. When they grow deep into the sandy soil and take roots, it is very difficult to loosen or detach them from the ground. Just like roots of these pandanus seedlings, the friendship of our 2 nations will only grow and prosper in the years to come. I am confident that through cooperation, we will continue to seek opportunities to further strengthen the friendship and cordial ties that exist between the people of the Marshall Islands and the Republic of China, Taiwan. Komoltada. Now, may I have the ladies, please.
President Tsai is presenting on orchard to President Heine. There is 100 seedlings that this will grow into that, but there's 100 of these that will be distributed to all the ladies in the house. Thank you.
We would like to invite Her Excellency President Dr. Tsai Ing-wen to present her remarks.
中华民国总统蔡英文阁下致辞。
马绍尔群岛共和国海尼总统，还有希克部长，还有几位部长、国会议员，那么在场我们马绍尔群岛的妇女代表，各位先生、各位女士，大家好。
Your Excellency President Heine, the Honorable Foreign Minister Stilk, Honorable Ministers and members of the Nitajila, women's representatives of the Marshall Islands, members of the delegation, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon.
亚奎，去年夏天，海尼总统来台湾进行国事访问的时候，我们针对妇女培力的议题深入交换意见，最后我们形成了共识，就是两国将共同成立妇女创业小额贷款循环基金。
Last summer, when President Heine traveled to Taiwan on a state visit, we addressed issues of women's empowerment, engaging in a deep exchange of opinions. Our ultimate consensus was that our nations would jointly establish the Women Business Startup Small Loan Revolving Fund.
半年来，经过两国相关的部会同仁密集的讨论，今天我们终于共同见证了设置基金的合作备忘录的签署。
Half a year later, and after close discussions between colleagues from associated ministries and departments, we are gathered here today to witness the signing of a cooperative MOU that establishes the fund.
我非常期待未来这笔基金可以永续利用，为马绍尔群岛想要创业的妇女朋友提供有效的第一桶金，以及营造更友善的创业环境。
Looking ahead, I hope the fund can be employed sustainably, providing Marshallese women with the initial tranche of financing needed to get their business off the ground, as well as building a better business environment.
我要特别鼓励曾经来台湾参加技职训练的女性学员，希望大家都可以把技能学以致用。这些专业技能不但有助于增加家庭的收入，改善生活的品质，同时也代表着女性能有更多实现自我的机会。
In particular, I want to encourage women who have been to Taiwan for technical and vocational training to put the techniques you learned to good use. These professional skills serve not only as a means of raising family income and improving quality of life, but also provide women with more opportunities to fulfill their potential.
另外，如同台湾已经验证的成果，女性投入创业、就业，也会带动国家整体的经济成长，使得社会变得更有活力，可以说是一举数得。
As Taiwan's achievements have shown, investing in women's entrepreneurship and employment yields a multitude of benefits, bringing economic growth to the entire nation and rendering society more dynamic.
就让台湾抛砖引玉，促成更多性别平等的具体行动。也祝福这个基金能成功的让马绍尔群岛的妇女姐妹都能够实现理想。
So let the experience of Taiwan be an impetus to promote even more concrete actions to facilitate gender equality. May this fund bring much success to our Marshallese sisters in fully developing their potential and realizing their dreams. Thank you.
谢谢大家，科莫塔塔。
We would like now to invite the Marshallese women to perform a song.
马绍尔群岛妇女联合会献唱会歌。
I'm sorry. I call upon Ambassador Najon Edwards to deliver the closing prayer.
请各位一同与牧师祷告。
Ginger, may the grace and love of our Jesus Christ be with you now and forevermore. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the ceremony. Thank you for your attendance today. Please stand and show our appreciation again for the attendance of Her Excellency Dr. Hilda C. Heine and President Dr. Tsai Ing-wen.
礼成，请起立鼓掌恭送蔡总统阁下与海尼总统阁下。
Thanks, guys. Hey, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, in 10 minutes, we will open the first session. Yeah.
testing, testing. Oh my gosh. Testing. Gross.
Hi. Hi, Kim.
For our listeners online, Yahweh again, thanks for tuning in to the opening ceremony of the conference. We are now moving into the first panel discussion on women's economic empowerment. Our moderator for this panel Our moderator for this session will be Director Leituala Quinisalani Tago Elisara of the Pacific Community Social Development Program. And we will be commencing in about 5 minutes, so please stay tuned. Again, if you are listening, you may post your questions on the several platforms on the website, the Facebook page, the YouTube channel, and also the Twitter account. We kindly ask that those of you in the room and those that are participating as panelists to ensure that your background and that the noise level is at a very minimal.
Do I unmute?
Right now, we're going to pass it on to our moderator for this first panel discussion, Ms. Queenie Salani Tago Elisara.
Yakwe once again, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our first session where we will hear from our panel talking about women's economic empowerment as we consider what we as leaders can do to advance the economic empowerment of our women. According to the OECD, economic empowerment is the capacity of women and men to participate in, contribute to, and benefit from growth processes in ways that recognize the value of their contributions, respect their dignity, and make it possible to negotiate a fairer distribution of benefits of growth. Economic empowerment increases women's access to economic resources and opportunities, including jobs, financial services, property and other productive assets, skills development, and market information. We will now hear from our panelists speaking about the different dimensions of women's economic empowerment. And our first panelist is Honorable Faustina Raoul-Marou, Minister of States from the Government of the Republic of Palau. Our second panelist is Her Excellency Dr. Yun, Ambassador at Large, Republic of China, Taiwan. Our third panelist who joins us live online from Pohnpei is Ms. Heralyn Mulvik, Pacific Women Business Counselor for SPC or the Pacific Community. Our fourth panelist is Dr. Manumatawai Tupo Rusin, who is the Director General of the Pacific Forum Fisheries Agency. And our last panelist is Ms. Linda Teteth, the Women's Interest Office, who is also joining us live online from YAP. We will begin by asking our panelists some questions to guide our discussion on the different dimensions of women's economic empowerment. And then at the end, we will allow some time for a question and answer session. And this will be open to the audience present here, as well as our online audience. For our online audience, we do ask that if you have any questions or comments for the panel, please submit them now so that we can move straight into the online discussion after the panel presentations. Without further ado, let us begin with our first question for Minister Faustina. Minister, you're probably one of the senior ministers from Micronesia that has engaged in the work on gender equality and cultural development for some time now. And so based on your experience, Minister, what can leaders do more to promote and protect traditional knowledge related to cultural industries? And what do you think are the major challenges for women working in the creative and cultural industry sector?
Stakeholders who actually, as I mentioned earlier, who actually makes the villages tick. And so therefore, by encouraging traditional agricultural systems, traditional aquaculture systems, traditional fishing methods, you are actually empowering the villagers because they've been doing it for years and centuries even. And so by strengthening the traditional knowledge through what they know already, then in turn, they're going to make money out of it. Right now, they market their produce, what they grow. At the same time, they're teaching their young people, their children and grandchildren in the villages how to actually do it. So there is continuation of knowledge. The transferring of skills and knowledge is transferred to the next generation. I'll let other people learn.
Thank you, Minister Faustina. We'll come back to you during the question and answer session. And if our online audience has any questions, please.
We will move on to our second panelist, Ambassador Dr. Yun.
the women's movement continues to engage in different ways to support the promotion of gender equality, not only in the Pacific, but also globally. From your perspective as ambassador, how can the women's movement continue to support the economic empowerment of women?
Harmon from ROC Taiwan. Since I have been involved in the women's movement for more than 10 years, so I just speak from my experiences as a women's movement activist. I think regarding the issue, how does women's movement can help to improve women's economic empowerment? I have 3 points to make. First of all, as we just talked about that in the last section, women's access to health and education is very important. Women need to have clean water, women need to have the free reproductive rights, and women need to be educated, then they will have enough knowledge and skills to make informed decisions and not to depend on others. Okay. Secondly, I think the society should have public care program for children and elderly. Otherwise, for those women who participated in the job market or as entrepreneurs, they will be forced to take the so-called second shift after they get off from work, and which will either harm their job career or harm their health. Okay. Yeah. Certainly, I think women's participation in politics is very important too. As one speaker said that, only women can represent women's interests in the previous panel. And I just want to add that actually, as international research have already shown, that female politicians care more about the social issues like public health, education, and public care program, while their male counterparts care more about issues like transportation, military issues, and international affairs, etc. So, in order to have, to increase the numbers of women in politics, actually, it will implement more women-friendly bill and policies. That will be passed. So we need to have more women in politics. Okay. In concluding, let me end my presentation by saying, to be an independent person, women need to be economically independent first. So let's work together to empower Pacific women. As ambassador at large for women's empowerment from Taiwan, I would also like to assure that Taiwan is very willing to be of help to engender a better world for women and men. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador. Again, we'll come back to you for any questions from our online audience and also from our audience present here today. But we will now move on to our next speaker. Joining us live online from Pohnpei, our next speaker, Ms. Herlin Movic. Given your work in the Pacific Women Growing Businesses Development, what are the major barriers in terms of access to economic resources and opportunities for women to establish businesses and to sustain these initiatives?
Thank you, Queen Isalani, and I thank you all for giving me the opportunity to be a panelist for this conference. Studies have shown that when women have access to economic resources, it has multiplier effects. It increases women's economic empowerment and initiates a spiral of effects on their social, economic, and political well-being, as well as bridging the gaps between gender inequality, their families, communities, societies, and their countries. It also shows that when women contribute to the economic and political situations of the communities, there are positive repercussions. Now, based on my own experience and discussions with women, the strongest forces that work against women and still true today are cultural and social norms of society. We can deal with systematic barriers, laws and regulations, and no matter how long it takes, we can put it down in writing, and yes, we can say we've done it, we can change it, and it's physical, it's there for us to refer to it. But how do we deal with society's biases or cultural biases? These norms are stereotypes that shape how we perceive the role of women in our societies. These are barriers that make it difficult for women to reach their potentials in jobs, in businesses, and in contributing to the well-being of their societies and families and communities. We can create the best training courses for women to start businesses and them finances, but if we do not address the social biases, none of that will work. And some of those biases that we have, and which are access to property rights, we still have a lot of women who do not have property rights. Access to economic resources requires collaterals and guarantees of in order for them to access finances. We still have a lot of women who don't have that because we still have in societies we still have culture that bans women from having properties. A lot of women still engage in informal and unregistered businesses, and because of those biases and social norms, women are not able to go out and be able to look for opportunities in order to have to be able to access economic resources. This is the reason today the stereotype of woman, the majority of informal businesses are woman-owned because there is almost a requirement that women need to devote certain time of the day to ensuring that families are well taken care of. And so it doesn't give them, in order to balance their lives between their families and their businesses, they do not have the time and the opportunity to be able to do that. We still have and so the cultural and social norms go beyond simple fixes. And in order for us to address these issues, we need collaboration across different stakeholders to deal with the issues and make effective changes. We can, if we don't, excuse me, if we don't address the issues of social norms and cultural norms, we won't be able to, social norms and we can create the best trainings and we can give the best finances to women, but it's not going to work.
Thank you, Carolyn. Again,
Thank
we
you.
will come back to you if there's any specific questions or comments in relation to your perspective as presented on the panel. Our next panelist, Dr. Tupo Rosen, your appointment as the Director General for the Pacific Coral Fisheries Agency is an achievement for Pacific women, given the perception that this is indeed a male-dominant sector. Can you share with us what have been the major challenges throughout your career in law and in fisheries, and of course the lead up to becoming the Director General of FFA? What advice would you provide in the context of women's economic empowerment based on your journey in these sectors?
Komoltata Kwini, it is a great honor to highlight two challenges I've faced in my career that I'm certain will resonate with many of you. Firstly, being a woman with strong opinions, particularly a Pacific woman where the general norm is defer to male counterparts. Society expects men to speak up and have firm opinions. Society expects men to lead. Society expects men to challenge the status quo. Traditionally, women who exhibited these traits could face suspicion and resentment. I know I have. It may be threatening to see a woman voice her opinions, ask lots of questions, or stand up firmly for what she believes in. And it needs to be said, I've experienced these responses from some men and some women. The notion that as women we support each other come rain, hail, or shine is not always accurate. Yes, women can be intensely loyal and supportive of each other. But if rivalry kicks in, it can be a different story, and we need to own that. It may be sometimes disconcerting for some women to see another woman lead, or to find themselves reporting to a woman instead of a man. I'll talk more about this later, but I think it's important that we acknowledge this challenge. The second challenge I've experienced has been working in environments where information isn't widely shared because it's viewed as power. People working in silos, communicating only with their direct team and seeing other teams as competitors, not colleagues. People not sharing information in a timely manner. People withholding any data that might create a platform for decisions they don't want. Or people using their technical skills in an attempt to confuse others, for example, in finance or IT, by relying on their more detailed knowledge of those areas. This second challenge, withholding information, obviously cuts across gender lines. But I've included it today because my experience has been that female leaders can be subject to this problem more than male leaders. There can be a perception that it will be easier to get away with bad behavior when reporting to a woman. And staff in workplaces who are inclined towards withholding information may think they won't be challenged by a female leader as much as they would be by a male leader. So how to respond to these challenges? My own focus has been on building resilience and building skills outside core competencies. Let me drill down on these two attributes. Resilience enables us to stay the course in difficult situations, and we need women to stay the course. As the Honorable Minister Faustina has already stated, women are great at multitasking. We've been doing this forever. Rather than bow out of management or promotions because the management environment can be more testing or aggressive. I've been fortunate to build resilience in a couple of key ways. Firstly, through education, as the Honorable Ambassador from Chinese Taipei has already highlighted. Through age, experience, and support. I think it's important to surround yourself with people who believe in you and your dreams. For example, it's been a blessing to have a very supportive husband and family. It's also been a blessing to find like-minded colleagues and friends, both women and men, with a passion for our work in fisheries. And I see some of them here today. Secondly, reading, observing, and learning from so many mentors and leaders across the region on how to be more resilient. Building resilience is an area I'm passionate about as the Director General for FFA, and I plan to identify professional development opportunities that will help women grow their sense of personal strength. In terms of building skills outside core competencies, my belief is that it's important that we dive into areas we don't know much about. As the old saying goes, feel the fear and do it anyway. Financial literacy, as I mentioned earlier, is a big one in this regard. Don't just leave budgetary issues to others and skirt around the edges. Female executives who develop a sound knowledge of budgetary management are much more likely to thrive. And I'm not suggesting people need to become accountants, but basic balance sheet awareness is important. And I'd rather talk about law than finance, but I recognize the numbers are an important part of the job for any leader with a budget to manage. To help FFA staff and other Pacific women on both these fronts, and building on President Heine's foresight with this successful forum, I'm actively investigating how FFA can establish an annual forum for women in fisheries, which embraces the Blue Pacific identity. While women represent 70% of employment in fisheries processing, they're underrepresented in other areas of fisheries, particularly in management roles, and we all know that women are capable of so much more. I look forward to sharing more details about this forum in the weeks ahead, but I did want to give this conference a heads up that it's on the drawing board. I'll also be identifying more training mechanisms to empower our women, our men, all of our nationals, to build skills outside the core competencies, grow their resilience, develop a more cooperative mindset. And as many of you will know, cooperation is a cornerstone of my vision for FFA's work, that if we are to make a positive difference in the lives of the people we are entrusted to serve, no matter what hat we wear, we must cooperate. So I want to encourage more internal meetings, more cross-functional teams inside the FFA, and this will be a focus in my first year in the role. I hope my words have given a flavor of the challenges I've faced, but more importantly, the strategies I've used and will now guide in others to overcome these challenges. Komo tata.
Thank you, Director General, for sharing us your story. We do look forward to engaging further with FFA in advancing our agenda for women's economic empowerment. Our final panelist, ladies and gentlemen, is Ms. Linda Teteth, who is also joining us live online from YAP. Linda, your question is on work-life balance for women. The discussion on work-life balance for women, particularly when it comes to paid work versus unpaid work for working mothers, is an interesting debate. And the question for you is, how have you worked with leaders to improve the paid and unpaid work balance for working mothers? Could you hear us? Can you hear me, Linda? Can you hear me, Linda?
I can hear you.
Okay, let me start again now.
Sorry, I missed it. So.
The discussion on
work-life balance for women
is an interesting debate.
is an interesting debate.
How have you worked with leaders to improve the pay?
Okay, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody that was involved in this conference for giving YAP State an opportunity to be part of this. And it's such a privilege and an honor to be here with everybody. Currently, we have 6 weeks paid maternity and paternity leave for all YAP State government employees. I wanted to share a little on what the Women's Interest Office has been involved in regards to women's economic empowerment. Because our office is more of an information resource office, we work very closely with the women's group and the community groups in the communities. And one of the projects that we've been working on with food security have helped the women's group. And with all these projects, with our international partners from SPC, it has given that opportunity for the women's group, knowing about, especially with the gender component. It has been helping with a lot of the women's group be involved in these projects with food security and water security projects. And all of the food security projects that we've been working on, and at the same time educating the women how and encouraging them to be part of this. We also have partnered up with an NGO who's starting an after-school program
to help support the working parents who are currently working to support their family, and it has empowered them as well. Did you get all of that?
Sorry, Linda, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Were you going to continue or?
That was the end of the presentation. Sorry, it's a short one. Did you get all of it?
Thank you, Linda. It's a bit difficult to hear. But I was saying that
and those that are here were able to capture your presentation in order to help us ask some more questions or provide some comments in the next part of our session. I'm told my instructions are that the next part is the Q&A, and we've got a few options on what we do. So as we wait for the team to pass on the questions from our online audience, we can open the floor to the audience present here. If you have any questions or comments to our panelists, as we wait for the online questions and comments to come through. Alternatively, I can start the questions with 2 questions. Okay, there's another option. There is a video, and maybe we'll go to the video as we try to get ourselves organized in terms of the questions. So the video that we're about to show is on the Fiji Women's Fund, which will help provide us with some insights into what this fund is about and what might be some of the learning for us in potentially replicating this initiative in our own contexts. So can we have the video?
Hi, my name is Menka Goundred and I'm the Senior Program Manager at the Fiji Women's Fund. The Fiji Women's Fund was incepted 3 years ago, and we work with remote and rural women of Fiji, with registered and unregistered organizations, groups, loose collectives of women across Fiji. What's unique about the fund? We are a very flexible fund. We have approaches where we support groups to have scoping studies done based on their business plans, or we have supported groups where they've done feasibility studies before they can embark on the journey of what actually they want to do. So we've been flexible like that. The uniqueness of the fund lies in the fact that we're not like a traditional donor organization. We provide grant support, but we also provide tailor-made capacity support, which includes trainings on gender equality and social inclusion, child protection, on business models, on finance management, etc. One of the things we will be doing in a couple of weeks, and which is quite important because grantees will get an opportunity to learn from each other, is a cross-learning trip. So in that cross-learning trip, grantees will have the opportunity to, one, interact with, amongst themselves, form a network support group amongst themselves, but also interact with like-minded women entrepreneurs across Fiji This gives them the opportunity to see other business models or other women's empowerment projects that are happening across Fiji and who have been successful, and strategies on why they've been successful. Because we all know in the Pacific, some of the things we do encounter when we try to embark on a journey for change is around resistance and backlash. And one of the things in the cross-learning trip that we want women to converse about is on strategies that they're using to cope with resistance or backlash. We also try to build coalitions for change. One of the other outcomes that we work towards is eliminating violence against. We have a diverse range of grantees from established organizations like the Fiji Women's Rights Movement or the Adventist Development Relief Agency to local groups like the Ranari Parishad, Dalai Sakau Women's Group, Striders Women's Rugby Club. Yes, a rugby club. We also support a rugby club. And this is through a very unique idea of going to make a mobile gym for women and girls. And also, and our initial support to them is to do a feasibility scoping study around actually how this mobile gym is going to work. So like many others, I also question on, wow, a mobile gym, what's that going to look like? So and we also work with diverse groups like the LGBTQI. We have worked with San Fiji, which is a collective of sex workers and lesbian, bisexual, and trans women to have their empowerment programs or elimination of violence programs and so to support them in that nature, so that they also have access to trainings like financial management to support their organization, or financial literacy for their group members or organizational members, and also trainings like gender equality and social inclusion, so that they also have the opportunity to learn amongst others about social inclusion as well, on how we can all work together to include each other. We also support, speaking of social inclusion, disability groups. We have provided grants to the Fiji Disabled People's Association and their 4 affiliates, which include the United Blind Persons and the Psychiatric Survivors Association, the Fiji Association for Deaf, and the Spinal Injuries Association. So we understand that when we work with disability organizations, you need a very tailored approach to working with these groups, especially around capacity support and capacity building. We do have a capacity building strategy, a gender equality social inclusion strategy, and we are designing toolkits around both of these, and also toolkits around monitoring, evaluation, and learning. And we hope to learn from disability organizations through the support on a continuous journey together with the Fiji Disabled People's Association, so that we can also have these toolkits available for them and tailor-made for them, so they can also use it in the future. The sustainability element in the fund is something else that makes it unique, because we provide grants, but it's not like your support is going to end once your grant ends. We provide long-term capacity support to our grantees, so that something we say is that once you're with the fund for a long time, and that's the other unique point about the Fiji Women's Fund. For example, there are some grantees who were part of our first goal and whose grants have ended, but they still are within our capacity support lists. So we do recognize that these organizations perhaps need some assistance or capacity support in the area of improving governance for their organization, or strengthening their internal policies and procedures. That not having a grant agreement with them does not stop us to provide that support to them. So if organizations, or when organizations reach out to us, women's organizations reach out to us for that type of support, we are also able to provide that support. So the fund does exist in Suva, and we are here, and we have our social media pages to interact with. So if you have more questions and queries, please feel free to send us a message, a DM on Twitter, message on Facebook, or email us at info@womensfund.org.fj, and we will be able to, send those queries or respond to those queries and share our experiences more. And I hope you have a great virtual conference. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the first question from our audience. And the first question is to Minister Faustina. Of course, the other members of the panel are also welcome to respond to any of these questions. The question refers to the quote, "Let's not celebrate the first, but prepare for the next." What are some of the initiatives that you have in place to provide a space for intergenerational dialogue exchange, particularly for young women entrepreneurs?
Well, that is a really great question, because yes, indeed, as the chant that I was relaying this morning meant that we need to always be prepared. And let me use an example that was done back in 2015, where the youth in the village where I was doing work was looking at learning traditional architecture and traditional engineering. And that was kind of like difficult and yet not, because they were men who were teaching the young men how to actually build stones to make stone walls and to make stone platforms. And he was teaching them like how to arrange them so that they don't fall. And once that was done, and one of a 12th grader asked the Rubak, the men in the village, "How do you put them so that the rocks don't fall?" And so instead of teaching, he was actually went back to demonstration, actual hands-on demonstration. And this was done in a village of the northern village where they were reviving the stone wall and building a men's canoe house. So when I asked the man how you went about it, he said, you know, Tina, when you teach the young people, you actually don't tell them what to do. You actually do it. And when you do it, they look at the stones and how they're arranged. And so they figure out like which part of the stone is to be shaped what and how you do it. And so by actually doing it, then that's teaching right there. So it kind of brings back this issue that you mentioned, Director Letua, that the young people are so anxious and they're so ansied of doing things right away and get them correct, and so that they don't have to think about it. But if you bring them to the level of like, how do you actually teach them by doing it with hands? And I'm looking at all these beautiful things here that were done by the women of the marshals, and looking at the canoe there done by the men. And they're so well done and so well crafted. And it shows that, yes, our designs, our minds were actually always at work because we had to survive. We had to live. We had to actually farm so that we can eat. We had to plant bananas so that we can eat. Right now, they just go to the store and buy things. They just go to the store and buy rice and come and fix and press the button so the rice can be cooked by using rice cooker. You don't have to get firewood and you don't have to go to do that. So I'm coming around what the question is, but I think we need to be vigilant. We need to not give up, because This is the generation, and looking at the women there, sitting there, the chiefs, and the women here who are singing. If they sort of give up, what will be the youth of the marshals in the future? What will be the youth of Taiwan in the future if that is not followed? And if you don't transfer the knowledge and the know-how and the skills, how are we going to expect them to carry out martialist tradition, Palawan knowledge and tradition? So we shouldn't, we celebrate, but I think celebration is a daily thing. Celebration is, we celebrate every day when you accomplish something. So yes, celebrate, but make sure you're on track and focus. But celebration is a daily activity. And they teach us to smile every day, and when you do something, and hence you're making the young people smile because they've done something. Yeah, so I believe that we celebrate every day, but be focused in what we do. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister. We have another question for you, but we'll let you catch your breath, and we'll ask a question to our FSM colleagues joining in online, and then before we come back to you, Minister. The question for our colleagues in FSM: increasing women's participation in economic activities also increases the workload on women. What can be done to reduce the double burden on women? Did you hear?
Did you hear the question?
Did you hear the question?
Who was the question directed to?
I'm going to repeat the question. Increasing women's participation in economic activities also increases the workload on women.
No.
You can hear me? Can you hear me, Carolyn?
I'm not getting any.
I can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you a bit now. Yeah, it's coming. Yeah.
The question for you ladies: increasing women's participation in economic activities also increases the workload on women. What can be done to reduce the double burden on women? You ladies, question? Maybe someone can email Carolyn the question.
You're breaking up. You break up, so I can't hear the entire question.
Increasing women's participation in economic activities also increases the workload for women. What can be done to reduce the double burden?
Queenie, if I can share my thoughts, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Linda.
Okay. Yes, that remains a very big challenge for the Yaquis women, because especially when they're a working mom, and then they have all of these obligations to the village activities, the community. So all of this burden adds on top of their to-do list during the day and then on the weekends. And I think we do face that challenge, and I think as we go out in the community and we work with all the women's group, encouraging them to participate, I think it uplifts the burden on the women a bit. I think it's involving not just the women, but the whole community, everybody's involvement, women, men, the youth, even the elderly women, helps out too. And I think with the involvement of different people, everybody, it does uplift the burden on the women alone. Thank you. Can I hear you?
Our next question is for Dr. Manu.
Talk a little bit
Can you
more
talk a
about
little bit
resilience
more about resilience
and what are some of the advice that you can give small community-based organizations that are new in their communities, led by women, and often face judgments from both men and women in their communities?
Thank you for the question, Queenie, and this is an important one. And it speaks directly to being resilient, specifically for small community-based organizations led by women who face criticism when they're striving to succeed. And as I've highlighted earlier, it's really important to have a platform of cooperation and to surround yourself with like-minded colleagues, both men and women, who support your cause and have the same cause. I found that critical in my own experience. Also linking to an earlier question that's been asked to this panel about how we can support women better in the face of increasing their participation in economic activities and that double burden that it causes. And we have a saying that we all recognize: it takes a village to raise a child. And this is where our culture plays an important role, a critical role, in supporting women in their dreams and their goals. And it goes back to working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manu. We do have one more question, one last question for Minister Faustina. I'm just conscious that we're running behind schedule, so perhaps we can leave that question we can perhaps post the answer to the question later in the conversation. But we will conclude with the video by Vijaya Nakarajan of Macquarie University, who will provide a perspective on enabling a regulatory environment to support women's economic empowerment. Now, given the perspectives we've heard this afternoon on the different dimensions of women's economic empowerment, Professor Vijaya's perspective allows us to think about what can we do now in terms of having a relevant policy and legal framework to support and advance women's economic empowerment.
Hello, everybody. Firstly, before I start, can I please thank Kim Robertson and the wonderfully energetic gang for organising this virtual conference, the Pacific Women Leaders Coalition. It's terrific to be invited to talk to you today. I'd also like to thank the traditional owners of the land where I stand, which I'm standing in Sydney and speaking to you, and I'd like to thank them for allowing me to be here. My name is Vijaya Nagarajan, and I am a professor at Macquarie Law School, and I've been interested in gender and women's economic empowerment, particularly in the Pacific, for over a decade now, actually 12 years to be exact. I've been appreciative of the way in which Pacific women have been juggling all the balls for so long and doing so wonderfully at it. My interest is specifically women's economic empowerment, so I'll be talking about the SDG goals 1 and 8. Now, the focus of women's economic empowerment has shifted over the last decade or so. It used to be focused on human rights as a way of trying to empower women, but it's changed now to economic empowerment. The argument strongly is that the country will benefit from including women in economic participation. One of the arguments that has been strong in explaining why women have not to a large extent been participating has been identity economics, This explains that women's identity has been seen as important in employment patterns. Women's identity has meant that they tend to be concentrating in areas of caregiving or lower skilled clerical jobs. But we know that through a range of institutional practices, through a change of laws, and also just through sheer determination, women are now walking a lot of the halls of power, not just in community work, but they're also seeing that they're taking senior jobs in banking, in legal work, in accountancy in particular. So women are starting to break this ceiling and enter all these activities. Now, going forward, and just to include a couple of things for you to think about during your deliberations, there are two key points I'd like to make. The first point is that identity economics explains the constraints women have faced, but identity economics also tells us that a woman's identity is made up of a number of things which is not purely economic. It's made up of the kind of social, customary, cultural practices and her position within society and her role in performing these particular duties. They're really important to women. So as we go on to thinking and focusing on women's economic empowerment, it's not about always overruling these practices. It's also not always about making sure that these practices trump or stop women progressing. It's about finding how much of the fallout we can bear, because there is definitely going to be a clash between economic empowerment and the continuation of the traditions as we know. The second main challenge I'd like to put to you is that as we think about economic empowerment, the focus for such a long time has been on the formal economy. It's been trying to get women into formal businesses, to register businesses, to get licenses and so forth. But in fact, women dominate in the informal economy. And what's also true is that the informal economy is a significant portion of GDP. It seems to contribute 60% in many countries. PNG study, the recent study from PNG illustrates this. So I think moving forward, you've got to think about how you can strengthen women's position in the informal economy and allow them, if they wish to stay there while still making pathways for them to transition from the informal to the formal economy easier. I think my time is up, but before I go, I would like to recommend this book to you that I was the lead author on, that's published with the Asian Development Bank and also the Australian government, which has got some useful case studies and a lot more strategies that you might find useful and just interesting. Thank you so much for allowing me to participate. All the best with your deliberations. I'm sure you'll have fun, and once again, thank you and goodbye.
are listening online. That concludes our day one, and we'd like to remind everyone to tune in tomorrow morning. We will begin the live feed at 8:45, and our first session of the day tomorrow will be at 9 o'clock RMI time with the panel session on women in leadership, moderated by our RMI Deputy Chief Secretary, Kuno Kabua. We also have the 10 o'clock session on gender and human rights, moderated by Ms. Ria Moss Christian, the RMI National Nuclear Commission. And our final session on women and health will be moderated by Ms. Melania Nawandra, advisor at the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat. And we will close the day tomorrow with a closing statement from Her Excellency President Dr. Hilda C. Heine. For more information, you may contact us at Pacific Women Leaders Coalition at gmail.com. You may also message us on our Facebook page and on our Twitter account. With that, we shall see you tomorrow. Thank you very much for tuning in to our first day.